Here at the Customer Catalyst Conference, I'm delighted to introduce Nick Chong, Head of Global Support and Services at Zoom. Without a doubt, Zoom is one of the greatest customer-led success stories of recent times. Spurred by the explosion in home working, video meetings have moved from exception to commonplace. We are privileged to have Nick speaking at the conference. My colleague Daniel Borsa speaks to Nick.
Hi, Nick.
Good morning, Daniel. Great to be here.
Thank you for joining us. So great that we're having the keynote with you about zooming in on growth. So 8 years ago, Zoom was founded by Eric Yuan. You have then traded on the stock exchange. You started at $36 a share. And I think everything about the company has been customer led, which I think is what people would really like to hear about today. So tell us about your role, because I understand you were the first executive to join Eric back in 2012.
Back in 2012, the idea behind Zoom is really to create an experience and video that is seamless and easy, and a customer experience from getting Zoom and adopting Zoom should be as seamless as well. When I first joined, Eric's idea was to bring me in as the first executive to do three things: largely lead the product marketing team to define the product, to strategize on the go-to-market strategy, and then to get early customer adoption and the beachhead going out. So since then, we've actually grown quite a bit, as you've talked about, and I'm really excited to be here to talk about the journey and what we have done to date.
Brilliant. And I think we're going to talk about the 10 sea change growth drivers. And obviously one of the biggest challenges for organizations is breaking down the traditional organizational silos. And I know obviously Zoom, you've done an amazing job of doing that, from everything that's intuitive for us as users of Zoom, which we are using today.
Yes, and Daniel, as we have talked about, I will share in the next couple of slides the journey that we've been from the beginning of Zoom till now, and how we've changed the strategy and the approach to business. And particularly, I'm really glad that you have shown in the book the 10 sea change growth drivers here. If I were to go back and look at the strategy we put in place at that time, if you look at the first right half of your sea change here, the voice, the culture, the experience, the technology, the digital, and success, those drivers were exactly what we strive to do in the beginning part of our journey. And as we grow and mature, we've gone on to add the health, engagement, co-creation, and the advocacy piece. Okay. Let me share with you how things were started back in 2012. In 2012, there were two sort of go-to-market and product strategies in the world at that point. On the left, you see a traditional setup where you have a product, you have a concept, you have a product, and the idea behind selling this product is that when you sell it, someone will spend money on it, and you have a user base. If they buy it, and you'll grab their mind share. That was the traditional approach to product selling. Then came the concept of a freemium back around 10 years ago. And the idea of freemium is really sort of capturing the fact that you have a product and potentially a service, but in order to go to market, you will split your strategy into looking at tiered features and tiered support. That means when you have a product, for the freemium part of the product, you have limited features, and then you've got more features and you pay more. And then if you want full features, you pay even more with your spend. And when it comes to the customer's access to support, there'll be tier support, free level, paid level, and premium level, right? And then in order to get the mindshare. Those were sort of the ideas at that point in terms of a go-to-market strategy for a product or a service. When Zoom was founded at that time, and we started to think of the idea of launching a product and launching this Zoom service out in the market, we decided to change the strategy underneath it. We said, Instead of doing what traditional freemium products have done, Zoom will become a freemium product, but we will do it different. Instead of the strategy being focused on just the product experience, we will change it to focus on a complete customer experience. That means two things that we'll do different. One, when it comes to the product, it will be a full-featured product. In our mind, a customer will experience the best experience when they can actually feel and use the full-featured product. With that comes the word of mouth of the strength of the product, the likeliness that they will use it, and the likeliness that they want to share it with more people. Again, that brings back to the growth drivers you've mentioned, the voice, the advocacy, the experience behind it, and the technology that they're using that embodies the full-featured experience. When it comes to the success side or the support side of the house, again, instead of focusing on support like traditional services or companies used to do, which is, hey, this is a reactive piece of support, we wanted to shift and focus strictly on success. The success of the customer lies in the health of the customers, the engagement of the customers, as I mentioned, and the overall success based on what Zoom has called delivering happiness. So one thing that we've done is that now that we have a strategy to focus on customer experience, we now have to be able to translate that into the product and innovation and the differentiation, as we mentioned. So one thing we've done is to set is a full-featured product. When you're having a one-to-one unlimited meetings, it's unlimited minutes. When you have more than 2 people, we put a 40 minutes capped on it. The reason why we did that, we have recognized and we've done some research that 40 minutes video meeting is about the right level of time. We have got your sessions in place, and because of the great experience with eye-to-eye contact and live interaction, generally meetings can be conducted within the timeline. So we figured it was a good strategy to do that. And we allow the first in the industry to allow 25 attendees to join a video meeting at the same time back in 2012. Then when it comes to the success strategy as well, we wanted to focus, as you have implied in your growth drivers as well, ensuring a set of success tools. We have a live video support. Customer can come in and use Zoom to have live video support instead of the traditional ways of talking on the phone or just email. We listen to customer at all level. There's an in-app feedback channel. There's a email channel. There's a web channel as well. And there's constant meeting between myself and Eric with customers to listen to the voice of the customers, the co-creation of technologies that we can do. The gallery view, which I've experienced here, was a derivative of a customer expressing the need to have a gallery view.
So Nick, we talked about culture and about that whole ethos that you and Eric have had about making people happy. And it sounds very simple, but I know it takes a lot to continually sustain that customer-led culture. How have you gone about it?
I think the aspects of delivering happiness is something that started with Eric. When your leader starts that, it permeates down the chain. Eric listens, he watches all the feedback that comes in, he responds, he meets with customer, and it's a tendency that is built up within the organization. So from a day-to-day basis, we do everything we can to follow the culture of delivering happiness. That includes, as I've mentioned, right? Follow up with every question that comes through, quick response, product development, and most importantly, ensuring that the customer feedback permeates throughout the organization, not just the front line, all the way back to engineering.
So if we look at the next sea change growth driver about voice, I know that we've talked in the book about you have an NPS score of 72, and there's that whole debate around it. the voice of the customer isn't just about NPS. Tell us a bit more about what you do at Zoom with voice of the customer.
Yep. So from the voice perspective, there are multiple touch points within Zoom to ensure that we listen across all channels. For example, as we mentioned, right, from the success sides, there is the regular checkup on the NPS. And we don't do NPS just in terms of a once a year activity. NPS is done on a constant basis. We have a system that's built in place. When customers log into our portal, it's being checked for the NPS. It depends on the types of product that they use as well. We checked on the NPS for the product, right? We have CSAT when they have a ticket that is open and then is closed. There's a question that goes out about the experience they've gone through as well. And then we have a feedback channel across the product that they can just submit and say, thumbs up, thumbs down. The experience, was the audio good? Was the experience good across the board? And then we have a sales organization that constantly going out to query customers on how has our sales team and experience been for them. So the voice customer is not a one-time or a yearly thing. It's a constant day-to-day, hour-by-hour, minute-by-minute experience that we want to be able to measure.
And I think that's the difference. So that would that be your advice to organizations listening today, is think about it on a multifaceted levels to achieve that dynamic listening to the customer?
Yes, absolutely. Again, the multiple approaches, as you mentioned, and the constant basis of listening that will really sort of help and propel the experience in the long term.
Brilliant. And I know we've talked a lot earlier about the customer experience already, but in terms of the technology behind that as a sea change growth driver, tell us about how you've achieved the technology that enables that customer experience.
That's a great question. So from a technology perspective, Zoom is all about two-way real-time communications. That requires a technology that's robust on both sides, in the cloud and on the client. And there's an underlying technology underneath it, which is our codec technology that enables real-time video, voice, and data communications. That technology has to be high performance, simple to use, simple in the back end, scalable, as well as being able to address myriad of new innovations above it. That has been our core technologies that we have built as a company in the last 9+ years prior to the product coming out. A highly scalable codec technology that resides on the client and in the cloud, and a highly scalable interaction between the two technologies to enable the experience that you're seeing right now with Zoom.
And so building on that, you are the epitome of a software as a service subscription business, and in getting that seamless digital experience. Can you explain a little bit more about that and how you bring that to life?
Yeah. So the experience from a technology perspective really boils down to the simplicity of use when you come to use Zoom. A single button, a security button that's simple to push to address, to turn on security features, recording features, transcription features, and gallery view, multi-content, video content sharing with audio. The variety of those aspects of those end user perspective from a technology perspective really gets into the front line when you're using the product. Okay? So we've really taken the technology in the back end, allow it to filter out to be a simple but yet robust experience across all usage and your user experience in the same time.
Okay. And with customer health, linking what we're talking about, the voice, how do you do customer health scoring at Zoom?
Yeah, so there are two aspects of customer health, right? One is sort of, the adoption and usage and problem side of the house. So on a day-to-day basis, we have the ability to sort of manage, how well, what usage is it being used, what product is being used, how well it's being used, What are the problem areas? Are there issues with the rooms? Are there issues with the phones? So that's a constant sort of health that's been given. We have a dashboard that's provided to the customer that the customer themselves can experience and see the dashboard in terms of how they're doing. Then the second part of the health is really sort of around the overall customer health, right? From their buying perspective, from their NPS scoring, from the QBR that we do on a constant basis, from the backend systems as well, and how they're using it, and the cross product linkage as well. So really, one is more about the user experience, the health of it, and then one is more the customer as a whole and the health around those as well. So we try to do a combination of both.
And then, so in terms of customer success, your team that is all about retaining your customers, they don't have sales targets, do they?
So the difference between our success group and another success group is really the focus is not on per se the upsell or the cross-sell, which is generally being done across organizations. Our focus is really around good customer experience, good customer adoption, retention, and the continuous renewal of even the same product, right? Ensuring that those are successful. But adoptions and retention are really the key metrics from a customer success perspective.
So in terms of then you've got your customers, you're retaining them, you're creating this great seamless digital experience. How do you then go about, continually engaging with the customers? I know you've recently had your Zoomtopia customer conference virtually. So tell us about that.
Yeah, from an engagement perspective, likewise, we have our technical advisory board that we listen to on a quarterly basis, feedback from different segments of our customers base in healthcare, in education, in financials, in government, in education. So a variety of those that we use those platforms as ability to listen from a broad perspective of requirements, strategy, business drivers, and overall satisfaction with Zoom. Then on the annual basis, we have this big event called Zoomtopia, which is largely built upon the engagement process. Most user events in the past have been more of a one-way directions where the company presents the technology, presents the roadmap, and presents the various aspects of the businesses. In Zoomtopia, we try to do a more complete 360 view. Our customer actually presents, our customers gives their point of view, our customer drives the roadmap strategy, and our customers actually been engaged in almost 90% of the sessions going on being customer driven, right? So I think that's really the engagement model that we want to do. Constant basis from a advisory board and council, and in Zoomtopia, getting customer to be a key part of the engagement.
So that links really nicely on to about how you co-create with your customers. And obviously one of the issues that you've had is about security. Can you just give us the example about how you've created this customer group on that issue?
Yep. So, Zoom has always prided itself in building a highly scalable and highly secure products. Many of the security features were embedded into our technologies. Back in the days, we've had the admins in companies turning on and off security. But as Zoom customer base has grown, some of those functions are not there in small organizations. They don't have an IT group. They don't have folks that are dedicated to just running Zoom. So in part of that, we recognize some of the security features weren't turned on because of the not having that level of expertise within the organization. So we've done two things as we listen to customers, right? First of all, they tell us, hey, how do we make this security features more prominent? So we've added a security icon within the product, a simple click that allows you to turn on the security features, locking the meetings, allowing sharing, waiting rooms features, locking with passcode and a variety of things. So we make those security features more prominent, more accessible to all users at all times. The second thing is really from an enterprise perspective, the different security and business requirements. So there's a Security Information Council that was formed, and the council allows a variety of input into how we do things. And one of those co-creation that comes along is the idea of a end-to-end encryption, that the security encryption keys are managed on the endpoint perspective, not from the cloud. So in the last week or so, we've actually completed the introduction of the end-to-end security feature that was enabled to an acquisition of a company known as Keybase.
That's amazing. So the likes of the customers who are on that group, from National Australia Bank to Citibank, they have enabled you to co-create the solution to that security issue.
Absolutely. The feedback from the financial services, from government, from variety of educations as well, as some of those names that you have mentioned have been key in us developing these features for them.
So what would you say in terms of your advice to the organizations listening today is the secret to nurturing successful customer advocacy that will then be your new sales team, as opposed to the traditional view of that organizations have, that you have to have this separate sales team?
Yeah, I think the fundamental difference between how we approach it, right, from both a culture and advocacy perspective, is to ensure the customer is delighted and happy with your product, and their word of mouth is actually larger than any sales organization that we can create. The advocacy from sharing in social media, talking to their customers, inviting more users to use their platform, bringing their colleagues into the platform, those all drive the ability for us to sell at a level that is much more scalable than just hiring, right? So the combination of customer word of mouth, the combination of being easy to acquire our product online, on platform, and a very robust sales team that can guide and lead the customers to the right level of solutions and the right level of purchase guidance as well, really help any organizations to scale.
So if you then look at, it's not easy to bring all of those 10 sea change growth drivers together to drive growth. But in terms of how Zoom measures growth, what would you say to organizations to do?
So I think the biggest measure of success and growth really lies down to the 10 sea change growth drivers that you've mentioned, right? Across the culture, the experience, the technology, the digital, the engagement health, all those 10 sea change drive components are key part in driving growth. And we strongly believe that you have to, first of all, embrace those drivers. And then second, have the ability to measure those drivers across. And then last but not least, be able to innovate across those growth drivers, right? As we mentioned, across experience, across systems, technology, right? To be able to innovate across that. So if you embrace it, you have a culture of, measuring it as well, and then innovating across it. That to us will be the key components to ensure long, sustainable growth.
And so you measure net revenue retention as well as lots of other measures. Are there any sort of examples you could share with us?
Yeah, obviously, from a outbound perspective, right? That, those metrics that we mentioned will include stuff like NPS, right? Net retention growth, renewal rates, and obviously a bunch of other sort of sales and customer metrics as well, CSAT being more. So across all those dimensions, there's some internal metrics and some external metrics that we measure.
Okay. And so what next for Zoom in the next 12 months?
So with the, with the changes that we've seen with the customer drives and the growth and the requirements that are out there, we think Zoom is really going to be the most exciting company to be in the next few years to come. From the innovation around Zoom apps, an application that will tie applications into the platform that you're using now, sharing content, having gamifications into it, having collaboration built into it, having API and SDK that can embed our technologies into healthcare, into education, having a platform called OnZoom that will allow content creators, content teachers, and attendees to be able to learn new things, to learn new skills using the OnZoom platform. Introductions of our Zoom phones to tie not just meetings and rooms, but communications on phones, cloud PBX, and innovations around phones coming on. Those are all areas that we feel that the aspects of Zoom being in communications, collaborations, and user experience, and the whole thing wrapped around to deliver the best customer experience and the best usage across communications perspective would be how we think would drive Zoom to be the next platform for communications and collaboration.
So leaving us with the end of the session, if there is one thing or application that's been co-created in these most unusual COVID times that everyone's experiencing, could you just share one story that's sort of something that's come out that you wouldn't have expected as a result of that engagement with your customers and advocates?
Yeah, I think in the midst of the last 3 months or 6 months, the biggest change that we've seen is really around education. That is a big change that we've seen. Customers come back and say, schools will be remote, online classes are being offered, and what can we do better? So the premise of OnZoom is really around the concept of tying, not just formal education from, colleges to universities to elementary schools, but tying ad hoc educations from learning about meditation, from learning about cooking classes, from learning about selling strategies, all being put in place in the OnZoom platform, right? So really the co-creation of the most dramatic change, I think, that has come out of COVID is education. From as I mentioned, from home single user educations to student education to college educations and post college education as well. That being the single most important driver for the next era.
Nick Chong, Head of Global Support and Services at Zoom, thank you very much for sharing your zooming in on growth.
Thank you so much, Daniel. I appreciate the chance to share this.
Customer-led growth offers some amazing advantages. It's not all plain sailing, and Zoom has overcome plenty of storms on the journey. For me, the lesson is that trusting your customers leads to trust in return, even when things get choppy. Huge thanks to Nick Chong at Zoom for finding time to speak with us. Now, let's continue the Customer Catalyst Conference.